Welcome to Transform Your Workplace. Thanks for giving us a shot if this is your first time, and welcome back if you are a regular listener. As you know, this show is all about helping you build a healthier, more productive, and more human workplace. Every week, we bring you ideas, stories, and conversations to help you lead better, work smarter, and create a culture where people can truly thrive. Today's episode is brought to you by Xenium HR. If you've ever wished you could offload the headaches of HR and payroll so you can focus on growing your business, Xenium's complete HR plus payroll solution has you covered. They become an extension of your team, handling compliance, payroll, benefits, and the day-to-day HR challenges so you can focus on leading your people. You can learn more at xeniumhr.com. Now let's get into today's conversation. If you've ever found yourself reacting too quickly in a tense moment, whether at work, at home, or anywhere in between, this episode is for you. My guest, Cynthia Kane, is the author of the Paws Principle, How to Keep Your Cool in Tough Situations. She's here to share practical tools for slowing down, regaining control, and responding in ways you'll actually feel good about later. We'll talk about why it's so hard to pause in the heat of the moment, how to train yourself to notice what's going on in your body before you respond, and simple techniques like the soften method that can transform difficult conversations. Cynthia's insights are not just theory. They're actionable, memorable, and work in any setting, from a high-stakes work meeting to a heated family discussion. This one's going to make you rethink how you show up when the pressure's on. All right, here's my conversation with Cynthia Kane. Cynthia, it is such a pleasure to have you on Transform Your Workplace. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You wrote a book that we're going to talk about, and I so desperately needed this book. It's called The Paws Principle, How to Keep Your Cool in Tough Situations. And you write that between stimulus and response, there's space. In that space is our power to choose our response. What's been a pivotal moment in your life or some like aha moment where you recognize this space? Because I'm still trying to find that space.
Well, I think a lot of us are still trying to find that space. I think that for a very long time, I didn't know that there was a space that existed at all. For me, I didn't realize there was space until I lost my first love very unexpectedly. And that threw me into a very challenging period in my life. And that was the first time I experienced emptiness or space. And from that experience, I started to learn more about slowing down, becoming more of an observer, really trying to connect more intentionally, more consciously, which leads a lot to creating more of that space in our lives, right? Like in the day to day. And so I really think like before that time in my life, I didn't know what space was at all. And then after that moment, my life became space, and I then had to choose how to navigate it. And so that's a lot of where I think my first real introduction to this idea of pausing really came in, because it was like a forced pause.
I can imagine a moment like that would definitely force you to pause, and you probably sought a lot of resources and find ways to just seek within yourself. And I think for most people, I mean, you even say in the book, pausing is not something we inherently know how to do. Why do you think it's so hard for people to pause before reacting or responding to any given situation?
I think we live in a really fast-paced world, right? And I think our culture is very keen on busyness and doingness. It promotes this idea of like, a fast-paced lifestyle. And slowing down, taking time is very odd, right? I mean, like when people speak slowly, a lot of times people get frustrated because they're just like, speed up, get to the point already, right? If you're in line and it's taking a long time, the urgency is there, the impatience is there. And so we aren't really conditioned to slowing down, thinking, acting, responding, right? We are really keen on having the answer right away, responding right away, even if we don't know the answer, even potentially pretending we do know the answer just to be the first to be in there. So I think it has a lot to do with just our society in general.
I've shared this with a few people in my inner circle, but I've gone to the doctor several times talking about stress, and I think my cortisol levels are really high. And my doctor's like, you should try this 10-minute non-sleep deep reset by Andrew Huberman. Just go look it up on YouTube. And I did it during the middle of the day a couple times. I'm like laying on my floor doing this 10-minute thing. And I'm like feeling so awkward because my computer's like within an arm's length away. My phone is right there. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm probably missing something. But then I got through that 10 minutes. It reset my whole body, like feeling like that pause moment. I felt refreshed.
Yeah.
And I saw the value in actually having that pause. Do you encourage people to do that kind of the same thing?
Yeah. I think that sometimes we think we have to like step away for a very long time, and we really don't, right? A pause is truly a brief moment. It could be even 30 seconds of simply closing your eyes during the middle of the day and resetting, because the idea is to, what you were saying, reset your nervous system so that you don't feel as out of control. And instead, you begin to notice that you are in control. And that's what that moment when you're lying on the floor, in the beginning, it feels so uncomfortable because your mind is racing and it's like, you should be doing this. You need to be over here. Why aren't you doing this? What's wrong with you? And then you just notice, oh, these are just thoughts that I'm thinking. I actually don't have to give in to them. I can continue to do what I do. And then they start to quiet down. And then you notice, oh, I just played around with time and it was okay. And it actually feels better. So yeah, I think for certain it's really amazing when you just do like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 30 seconds.
Now, the moment I just described is something where I'm like totally in control, but there's these moments that come up, whether it's at work or with family or in the moment with some stranger where there's pressure, confrontation, whatever it may be, a difficult conversation. What's our body doing during those times? And why is it so hard to pause during those moments of pressure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our body in those moments is really on high alert. And it's hard for us because it really is, we are wired to react, right? It is our biology. And so it is, the caveman in us, basically, where back in the day when we were being chased by tigers and lions and bears, we needed to be in that survival mode. We needed to be on high alert so that we could survive. And our nervous system hasn't changed or updated since that time period. And so today, what's happening more is that, a stranger cuts in front of you or someone says something difficult, and that becomes the threat. That becomes the attack, right? That becomes the lion, the bear, the tiger. And our body reacts in the same way as it did. So how we are wired, which makes it so, it is in those moments that are unexpected for us to be able to pause, to think, to respond in a way that we respect and we feel good about. So yeah, we're just on high alert, a lot of stress.
In the book, you introduce the soften method, which is super helpful in my opinion. Can you walk us through the origin of that and why you think softening the body is so essential in these high stakes moments that we might experience?
Yeah. So when we talk about, we're wired to react, when we are reacting, we are really in protective mode. So our armor is up. We're very hard in that moment, right? We are really kind of behind. We put up a lot of walls. It makes it really difficult for us to connect because we are so caught in ourselves, right? Because of that, we aren't able to express ourselves in a kind, honest, and helpful way. We aren't able to see from the other person's point of view. We aren't able to think clearly. We aren't able to see the other person as somebody that we care for or respect, right? Because they are really threatening to us. And so we harden. So the way for us to be able to handle those really challenging moments is to soften. It's to do the opposite. It's like I often liken it to if you've ever done martial arts at all. I don't know if you have.
As a kid, but yeah, never. I'm not as advanced as you are.
No, well, I mean, I've got my yellow belt and I feel really good about it.
Yeah, you should.
Thank you. But there's the moment where if somebody comes and they attack you and you are, solid and your body is stiff, you will fall down. But if they attack you and you're grounded and you're soft and your body is loose, you can move, you can pivot, you can be flexible, right? And that's how we want to be in challenging interactions. We want to be able to pivot. We want to be able to adapt and to move. And so what we want to do is learn how to soften in that moment. And soften really, it is an acronym as well. And the S stands for sensation. And that's really what we're doing in the beginning. We're really paying attention to what's happening in our bodies. And then we pull in a practice. So O stands for own your own discomfort. F is focusing on the present moment. T is taking a breath. E is eyes turned toward the other person. And N is need to say. So all of these are practices that we can do in the moment to help us soften.
In the moment, like how do you remember to do all these things? But I'm sure it's like any muscle, you gotta exercise this over and over again and recognize.
Yeah, it's also, you really only need to know the first piece, like the sensation piece, to start paying attention to what's happening in your body in that moment, like that discomfort that comes, right? Our heart can beat faster, our palms can sweat, like our jaw can clench, our tummy can get just kind of like funky, Once you notice that discomfort, then you can grab one practice and see if that helps. And if it helps, keep that practice. And that's your go-to practice. If it doesn't, you try another one. But there's lots of different practices to try.
And on that same note, at the end of the book, you said, there's a line that I loved. It's a good visualization. You said, if we want to master these heightened moments, we have to work with what's happening within us in these moments. We have to turn our attention to our body. And I thought that was a really good moment to say, like, just knowing the sensation is so important. But I often think, like, we spend so much time in school or in work learning communication, and training seems to skip over this part. Why do you think that is?
Yes, it really does. I think most people, when they think of communication, they just think of the speaking and the listening part. I really believe that this is the root of where your communication begins. It really does begin in the body. And it's very hard to change the way that you're interacting without paying attention to what's going on within you, right? It doesn't matter how many dialogue scripts somebody gives you. The tone of voice isn't going to reflect what you want it to reflect if your insides aren't aligned. So it's all about being congruent. What's happening on the inside needs to be reflected comes out on the outside. But it is this moment where you understand within you that something is off, that you're uncomfortable in some way, and you're bringing in your parasympathetic nervous system in that moment. So that rest and digest nervous system, and subbing out the sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight, flight, freeze, so that then you can continue the conversation. And I think what ends up happening is we focus so much on language and listening because we are such a mind culture, right? Like we focus a lot on thinking, and the body is kind of this afterthought. But we are a body and a mind. And so it's always with this work, it's body first, mind second, like thinking mind second.
One of the practices that you highlight in the book is literally saying your own name followed by "you're in control." This feels so simple, but possibly powerful in the moment. I've never done it myself, but why do you think speaking directly to ourselves actually helps us regain our composure and control in the moment?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have a lot of thoughts throughout the day, and we think we are our thoughts, right? We think our thoughts are who we are, and they are not. They are thoughts, right? And there is something, they are separate from us. And so we get really caught up when we're in difficult situations or interactions with the chaos around us, right? So with the language that the other person is speaking, with the want for us to get our point across, and we get very, very hooked in, and we are out of control in that moment, which is why we react and we say things we don't mean, and we show up in ways that we don't appreciate, right? So our work in that moment is to observe what's going on, to notice what's happening within our body, right? That is making it very more out of control in that moment, more chaotic. And then we get to gently bring ourselves back and be like, oh, hey, Cynthia, you're in control here. You can take control of this moment, right? This moment doesn't have to lead you. It's like, there's a story I love. It's an old Zen story. And there's this guy on a horse and he's galloping along. And then there's a guy on the street and he's like, to the man on the horse, where are you going? And the guy's like, I don't know, ask the horse. And that's kind of like how we are in these moments. So our work is to be like, hey, we know where we're going. Just take the reins, get control, begin again. And also a lot of studies have shown that when we talk to ourselves, specifically when we say our name to ourselves, it helps us to emotionally regulate.
I love that. You talk about disengaging in tense moments, not checking out, but softening and stepping out of the intensity. How do people practice this without feeling or coming across like they're avoiding an issue altogether?
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about this work is that it's very subtle. So people don't necessarily know you're doing anything, even though you're working pretty hard to calm the inside, so that then you can have a calm outside, right? Calm body, calm voice. So what you're doing in that moment is the other person may be speaking to you. You're noticing, okay, I'm feeling really uncomfortable right now. I can feel like the heat rising in my body. And then you'll start saying to yourself, if you're wanting to detach more, you're going to kind of focus on the present. So maybe you would ask yourself, what are my feet doing? What are my hands doing? What's my belly doing? The other person isn't going to have any idea that that is what you're doing, right? Then if you come back to the interaction and you have no idea what's going on, because let's say you did check out to be able to just check in for a moment, then that's when you get to say, I really want to make sure that I understand you. Could you repeat what you said back? Or I was trying to process what you were saying and I had a hard time. Could you share it with me again? Or you can even say, I just need to take a minute so that I can really get clear on what's happening here. So it gives you the opportunity to reset the conversation.
You had offered a really human insight when introducing some of the ideas in this book. And you said that most of the people I work with, you, want to do better, but they're uncomfortable in these daily conversations. So how do you help people, at least initially when they come to you, stay present, intentional, and especially when their like nervous system's on overdrive, like probably like minus most of the time? Like what are some things that you do initially with them?
So one of the first pieces is really learning how to become an observer, starting with this notion of understanding when you are in a conversation and when you are observing a conversation. And our work is to see, can we kind of step out a little bit when we're interacting with people to observe what's going on? So that's one piece of it. And the other is really starting to listen to ourselves. That's really the first piece that I teach, because the only way that we can interact with other people in the way that we want to is to first start to interact that way with ourselves, to change that relationship with ourselves first, and then we can start to express ourselves differently.
You share some ideas about asking ourselves some questions in the heat of the moment. One of them is, how can I be helpful right now? I think some of those ideas are great. Why do you think asking internal questions like this can actually help shift the tone externally?
So asking questions is fantastic in these moments, because what it does is it changes where your attention is. It takes your attention off of what is happening, off of the language, off of the back and forth, and you get an opportunity in that moment to see from a totally different perspective. It changes the way that you're looking at the other person. It changes the way that you're showing up. You know, if you're asking yourself, how can I be more patient in this moment? You start to answer that question without answering the question. Your language begins to answer that question for you. Your body begins to answer it for you. and you end up walking that path.
The audience that listens to this podcast, a lot of them leaders, managers, HR professionals, and in the book you make the case that managers, not just employees, need to model these pause practices. And you said it's even more important for the managers. When managers use some of these practices regularly, consistently, and they apply the principles that you're talking about in this book, what does that look like for them?
I mean, it looks like within their conversations with their teams, really being able to hold space for the criticism that may come, to hold space for ideas that they don't think are good ideas. It really makes it so that their work is to be able to show that it's a safe space for people to share ideas, to be creative. It gives them this opportunity to really connect more with those who are on their teams. And it creates a different environment so that people are more motivated, they're more productive and more engaged. And there's a lot more trust that gets built when we start taking these really difficult situations that people may come to you with, and instead of reacting and getting angry, being able to meet it with a calm demeanor.
There's a great metaphor that you highlighted in the book that actually kind of triggered an emotional response for me. And I'll tell you why in a second. But you said you compare our fast reactive conversations to barreling down a ski slope. Explain what that moment taught you and how we can slow the descent. And I'll tell you why that also triggered me, is because I snowboarded one time and I plowed into somebody who was doing something on the side. I never went back ever.
Yeah. I mean, that was very similar to my experience. I mean, I think that it's that sense again of being out of control. And we can be in control of these moments if we learn practices and tools to help ourselves. It's a learned practice. And so I think every interaction we have, especially those interactions where we don't know we're going to be getting into a disagreement or it's very unexpected, it does feel like you are barreling down that mountain. And the beautiful thing is the awareness that comes in of, oh, I am barreling down this mountain. This isn't going in the direction that I want it to be going. This is actually unhelpful. That is the beautiful moment, because that's the choice point. That's where we get to say, okay, I want to do something differently here. I'm actually just going to sit down. I don't have to go barreling down the mountain. I can just plop down, right? Take control.
And I think that's why I never went back to snowboarding or skiing, is because I felt out of control, and it's not a fun feeling. And I think that's why a lot of people avoid conversations that they probably need to have, is they feel like they're not going to be in control in those moments. And that's why these principles are really important, is if we can stretch these muscles and use them, we can probably step into a conversation feeling a lot more in control.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And they're very easy to do, and it's not about knowing all of them or doing all of them. It's about taking one practice and seeing if it works, and if it doesn't, trying another. And then they become your go-to practices.
You include breath work as a foundational tool, and you mentioned like chest breathing, frozen breathing, and a bunch more. What's one small breathing habit someone could start today to calm themselves, whether it's mid-conversation or they just need a pause during the middle of their workday?
Mm-hmm. So there's two that I really like. One is the 5-part breath, which is where you inhale for 5, and then we can do it together. Inhale for 5, hold for 5, and then you're going to exhale for 5. So that one is really good. The other one is inhaling for 4 and exhale for 8.
Both of those had a very different feeling.
Tell me about that. What were the differences?
I think the first one, because there was the 5-5-5, it was just like I felt in control the whole way through. The second one, the 8, was a lot harder, but it slowed me down, and I was intentional about the breath on the way out. So it was just a little bit different. Like one, I felt completely in control. One, I was like totally hyper-focused on that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think the 5-part breath is really good when you're in a difficult conversation, because it does have that immediacy, and it feels like that sense of control is there. The other, the inhale for 4, exhale for 8, is also, it's nice more like before a conversation potentially that you're going to have, or even after a conversation.
As we kind of wrap up, there's one thing that you said in the book is that these pause practices work at home with family, friends, partners, and kids. How has your personal life changed from using the things that you talk about in your book, not only at, work, but at home?
I mean, my whole life is different because of the work that I do. I mean, I really believe that my relationships with my children are very different than they would be if I didn't know how to pause or relax my nervous system in tense moments. I mean, my kids are 5 and 7, and so we still get a lot of tantrums and a lot of meltdowns and, a lot of talking back and not listening, right? So, how do you handle those moments? You can meet the chaos with chaos, or you can meet the chaos with calm. And so, I think that a lot of all of the practices that I teach and all of the things I write about, I implement daily in my day to day because I see how beneficial they are, because I know what my life was like before them. And it was a very passive aggressive, judgmental. I had a very hard time articulating myself, everything. So these practices really help me with my kids, also with my husband as well, being able to have conversations that are really challenging and difficult and stay in the room instead of, what I would love to do, which is just walk away, shut down. So they work in all different interactions and settings and environments.
So we covered a lot of different areas and things that we could do in the moment and some exercises we can do. I pulled out this graphic that you have in the book is about the pause plan, and it's over a 30-day period. Maybe can you talk a little bit about that? Is that a good place for people to start?
Yeah. So the pause plan is fantastic. You can also go to my website and sign up there as well, and you'll get a daily email around the pause plan. But the idea is that you are going to pick a pause practice and implement it for a week. And this is really a life practice. So you're bringing it into your day to day. So into your meetings, into your interactions at work, into your interactions at home, and really starting to see how by pausing, and this again, it's not, 10-minute pause here. We're talking about 30 seconds can change and shift the way that a conversation is being handled.
Cynthia, I really enjoyed this conversation. Your book is called The Paws Principle, How to Keep Your Cool in Tough Situations. Anything else you want to say as we close out the discussion or point people to any of your other resources that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I just think understanding that it really is a learned practice and it's not something that we're taught, but we are able to find the practices and tools we need to be able to express ourselves in these challenging moments. If you're interested in learning more about the work that I do, you can go to cynthiakane.com. You can check out the Pause Challenge that I have up there as well. And just, reach out if you have any questions. I am here.
My guest today has been Cynthia Kane, the author of The Paws Principle. Cynthia, thank you for coming on. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in for today's episode of Transform Your Workplace. The content on this show is strictly for general information and educational purposes only, so that you can go transform your workplace in a positive way. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the show are the guest's own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of either Xenium HR, the sponsor of the show, or me, the host, Brandon Laws. Additionally, Xenium HR or myself, Brandon Laws, doesn't endorse any guest, their business, or any organization they represent, so discretion is advised. We encourage you to work with a trusted advisor to find a custom approach that fits your organization's needs. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode.